Andrew Huberman.
Andrew Huberman.
Andrew Huberman.
Andrew Huberman.
It's Professor Andrew Huberman.
Andrew Huberman is the internet's favorite neurobiologist. He's also a professor of neurobiology at Stanford University and host of the Huberman Lab podcast. Andrew Huberman's goal is to
bring zero cost to consumer information about science and science-related tools to the general public.
I first found Andrew Huberman at the start of the year when I was having difficulty with really crippling anxiety and my overall well-being was not very great. So I stumbled across his podcast, The Huberman Lab, and the first episode I listened to was his episode on stress and anxiety. And this podcast really helped me with my anxiety. So in today's video, I'm going to give you two of Andrew Huberman's best tips on how to help cope with your anxiety. The first tip is something that can help right in the moment. It's one of those moments where you're really stressed, your heart's beating. This is a technique that can help calm you down in the moment and can work quite quickly. The second technique is a technique that you're going to have to practice over time. But yeah, in today's video, it's Andrew Huberman's two favorite techniques to help you cope with your anxiety. Technique number one is the physiological sigh.
A few years ago, when my laboratory got interested in studying stress in humans, we asked ourselves, what are the patterns of breathing that allow for the most rapid reduction in stress levels? And more importantly, what are the patterns of breathing that can be done in real time so that people can adjust their stress while they're still engaging in life, right? Breathwork classes, running off to Esalen for a weekend is a magical experience, but life demands pressing on you. That's typically when you feel stressed. So it is still true that vacation, long meditation retreats, and massages or a nice drink, if you're of drinking age, still work, but they're slow and they take you offline. The physiological sigh is a pattern of breathing that was actually discovered by physiologists in the 30s, and that was essentially rediscovered by Professor Jack Feldman at UCLA, a world expert in the neurobiology of respiration, and by my colleague Mark Krasno at Stanford, who studies lung function. The physiological sigh is a pattern of breathing that we all engage in deep sleep when levels of carbon dioxide in our bloodstream get too high. We, or our dogs, you can see your dog do this, will do a double inhale followed by an extended exhale. Children or adults, for that matter, that are sobbing and lose their breath, so to speak, will also do a double inhale, exhale. That's the spontaneous execution of what we call the physiological sigh. The reason it works so well to relax us is because it offloads a lot of carbon dioxide all at once. And the way it works is the following. Our lungs are not just two big bags of air. We have all these little millions of sacs of air that if we were to lay them out flat, they would be as big as about a tennis court or so. The volume of air, therefore, and the volume of carbon dioxide that we can offload is tremendously high, except that we get stressed as carbon dioxide builds up on our bloodstream, and as kind of a double whammy, these little sacs deflate. Now, when we do a double inhale, so I'll do this now twice through my nose, or you could do this, or you could do it through your mouth, but it works best through the nose. It's inhale, and then you sneak a little bit more air in at the very end. When you do that, you reinflate those little sacs. And when you exhale, then you discard all the carbon dioxide at once. So the simple way to describe this protocol is that unless you are underwater, you do a double inhale followed by an extended exhale, and you offload the maximum amount of carbon dioxide. And we found in our laboratory, and other laboratories have found, that just 1, 2, or 3 of those physiological sighs brings your level of stress down very, very fast. And it's a tool that, you can use anytime. I do hope that people will kind of watch other people or dogs as they start to relax or go down to sleep. You'll see this pattern of breathing, but again, it can be consciously driven. The other thing about breathing, and the reason why exhales are so vital, is the following. I know there's a lot of interest nowadays in heart rate variability. Well, most people don't realize this, but your breathing is actually driving heart rate variability. So when you inhale, this dome-shaped muscle beneath your lungs, your diaphragm, actually moves down because the lungs expand, it moves down. When you do that, you create more space in the thoracic cavity, and the heart gets a little bigger. It actually expands. As a consequence, blood flows more slowly through that larger volume, and the brain quickly sends a signal down to the heart to speed the heart up. The short, simple version of this is inhales speed the heart up. When you exhale, the opposite is true. That dome-shaped muscle, the diaphragm, moves up. The space in your thoracic cavity gets a little bit smaller. The heart gets a little bit smaller. Blood moves more quickly through that small volume, and the brain sends a signal to the heart to slow the heart down. Physicians know this as respiratory sinus arrhythmia, but this is the basis of what we call HRV, heart rate variability. And the simple way to remember this is anytime you emphasize exhales, in other words, making them longer than your inhales, you are slowing the heart rate down, you're calming your system. Anytime you emphasize inhales, you make them more vigorous or longer than your exhales, you're speeding up your heart.
So I started using the physiological sigh about 6 months ago in situations where my heartbeat was racing, my breaths were short, and I was overall just freaking out. So there's been a few instances where I've had to give a presentation, I've been in a stressful situation where my heart rate has just gone through the roof, and I've been struggling to cope and function at an optimal level where I'm not gonna freak out. So, like Andrew Huberman said, I use this physiological sigh, so I tend to do around 3 to 5 physiological sighs, and I've found it's been a great help in helping me relax in really stressful situations when I need something to act really quickly and calm me down really quickly. It's honestly helped me a lot, and I was skeptical at first, but I did some digging into the research, and there's a lot of good evidence supporting the use of the physiological sigh, and it's a technique I highly recommend you guys try out for yourselves in those situations where you just feel like your anxiety and the stress is getting the better of you. The second technique is panoramic vision.
When we are stressed, our pupils dilate. The effect of that pupil dilation is to create tunnel vision. It literally narrows our view of the visual world. We no longer see in panorama. And there's some other effects as well, but that's because the visual system through this cranial nerve system that I described before is tethered and is part of this autonomic nervous system. By deliberately dilating your gaze, meaning not moving your head and eyes around, but by deliberately going from tunnel vision to broader panoramic vision, literally seeing more of your environment all at once. You don't have to do what I'm doing, which is not blinking. You're welcome to blink. But it means deliberately dilating your gaze so that you can see yourself in the environment you're in. It creates a calming effect on the mind because it releases a particular circuit in the brainstem that's associated with alertness, aka stress. Now, this is very powerful. If you're running, for instance, and you're at max capacity or close to it, or you're kind of hitting like 80, 90% of maximum on the bike, and you dilate your gaze, what you'll find is the mind can relax while the body is in full output. And this is relates to work that in various communities, people are working with this in the sports community, military communities, etc. But it's a form, not really of stress inoculation. It's more about raising stress threshold so that the body is going to continue to be in a high alertness, high reactivity mode, high output, but the mind is calm. And so this isn't about unifying mind and body. This is actually about using body to bring up your level of activation, then dissociating, not the clinical dissociation kind of disorders, but dissociating the mental or emotional response from what's going on in your body. And over time, so if you do this, a couple times, you don't have to do this every workout, but if you do this maybe once a week or so, you start being comfortable at these higher activation states. What once felt overwhelming and like a lot of work now is manageable. It feels tolerable. So that's for navigating medium-term stress.
This technique I've been trying to practice over the last couple months. So just really trying to expand your eyesight when you are in a stressful situation. It's something I still want to get better at, but there's also a lot of great evidence supporting the use of panoramic vision, as Huberman discussed in his podcast. But yeah, also a really good tool to have in your arsenal if you are in stressful situations. It's to condition you to, when you're in a stressful situation, be able to calm down because you've had that experience of using panoramic vision in the past while you're stressed. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope some of these techniques will help you with your anxiety. I highly recommend you checking out Andrew Huberman's podcast. It's taught me loads of really, really good techniques and little habits we can do to bring into our life that can really help our well-being, our overall well-being. Like, for example, cold plunges, getting 10 minutes of sunlight in your eyes in the morning. The great thing about it is he explains it in a way that's easy to understand. It's backed by science, and it's really great. So I highly recommend you check out his podcast and his work, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.